Okay, let's talk about the Pop-up Configure tab. So I'm going to go ahead and select my pop-up on the left-hand side here, and it loads up. Oh, now it loads up the animation. Okay, so let's go ahead and head to Configure, and let's talk about what's going on here. So this is defining the conditions that allow this pop-up to show. So it's a bit more than that, actually. It defines, you know, not only, when this pop-up shows, but, under what circumstances, to what capacity, and also what happens when this pop-up is closed. So if you'll notice, there's a button here that says restrictions. So there are some restrictions with pop-ups. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up now. So there is a hierarchy for the pop-ups that will appear on a page slash portal. It is as follows from higher to lower. So there are pop-ups that appear on all pages or portals, pop-ups that are tabbed or framed when closed, and we'll talk about those at the end, and then standard pop-ups that are hidden on closed. So if we have a pop-up that appears everywhere, that's going to supersede pop-ups that are framed or closed, and those will supersede standard pop-ups. So global pop-ups will supersede all of the pop-ups. What this means is that if we have, let's say, 4 or 5 pop-ups that will show on a page, and we'll talk about that, or I'll go into more detail about that later. But if we have 4 or 5 pop-ups that show on a page, and one of those pop-ups is set to global, that global pop-up will be the only pop-up that appears. So global pop-ups, basically they show everywhere and they are higher priority. A global pop-up will appear on all pages, all portals, all modules, even classrooms and departments. So classrooms and departments have their own alert system. They have their own alerts tab, their own subscribers tab, and their own pop-ups tab. But if a pop-up on the site level is flagged as global, it will supersede all of those classroom and department pop-ups as well. Pop-ups share the same window, thus there are some instances where only one pop-up will be shown on a page. This happens when one of the following cases are met. This pop-up shows on a page or portal or on page or portal scroll, but there is another sticky pop-up set to appear on all pages, all portals at the same scroll position. So I'll talk about that when we get to the trigger section. A pop-up on the page or portal has the tabbed or framed state when closed. And I'll talk about that towards the end as well. Multiple pop-ups with the page load trigger will be compressed into a carousel. That's a pretty neat effect that we'll discuss as well, probably in a later video. And then on a note, these pertain mostly to page load or page scroll triggers. The only case that affects the click or hover trigger is the tabbed or framed close state. So those are the restrictions, but it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to actually view it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flag this pop-up as sticky. So sticky just means that this pop-up will appear every time the page is loaded. So no matter what, this pop-up will show. I can go to the page, and it'll pop up. You can refresh, it'll pop up again, so on and so forth. With sticky disabled like this, if I head into timing, you'll see I get cookie duration. So when sticky is disabled, every time somebody receives the pop-up, it creates a browser cookie for however long we define here. We could do 10, and then after 10 minutes, they'll receive the pop-up again. This is by default set to 60. So after 1 hour, they default again. Actually, it's a minimum of 15 minutes or 1440 maximum or 1 day. Anyways, so with sticky enabled, cookie duration goes away, and we're just going to keep receiving it over and over. So that's the sticky option. Global, we kind of discussed. This one is, the global pop-up. It's going to supersede everything. It'll show everywhere, so on and so forth. And then enabled, this is one of those things you want to make sure that it's toggled on if you want the pop-up to show. In a previous video, I talked about enabled versus active and what that means. We will discuss page selection in another video, and then include modules. This means that this pop-up will display on modules. A module is like the news module. If I go to district news, This is a news module. Even the site config where we were at before, that is a module. Um, and so if we want this to show on modules as well, we're just going to toggle that on, and I would like to. Pop-up timing is pretty self-explanatory. So what this talks about is when this pop-up is set to start, and this is a date time, so I can set this to tomorrow, for example, at shoot 12:00 a.m. So or yeah, starting at midnight. And then this pop-up ends either never, or I can specify a date and time for this pop-up to end. The moment that it leaves pop-up ends range, it will stop appearing, even if it's set to sticky. Um, so if it's set to end, tomorrow at 6 in the morning, let's do tomorrow 6 a.m. At 6:01, this pop-up is going to stop. Or we could set this to never. That's fine too. Lastly, is pop-up closed. I'll discuss this in a future video because this gets pretty complicated. And so we'll talk about that in a later video. But this is the basics for configuration, aside from the trigger, which we didn't talk about. But I'll show you those individually in a separate video as well. For now, I'm going to save the pop-up, and then I will see you in the next video.